What's the mistake that Christians, believers, church people make when they read the commandments that Sarah just read that makes them think not only are they good people, but they don't practice or fall into disobedience with this particular commandment?
They don't necessarily understand the definition behind covet.
Correct.
It's
Correct.
not necessarily perhaps taking possession of something physically.
Yep.
But they don't necessarily understand the full definition of it.
Yeah, that's certainly that's going to open that door, because remember, we're talking about what's the gateway sin to all sin, and we talked about its first manifestation clearly in the Old Testament, and that was where? Somebody help paraphrase. Where was that?
A little louder.
In the garden. Where in the garden?
Corner of happy and healthy.
Between corner of happy and healthy. Okay? and what particular in the garden occurrence are we referring to?
Of good of knowledge of good and evil.
The fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
And deeper than that,
Yep.
what it represented.
Correct.
The opportunity to be like God.
Correct. And Eve, in her taking of the fruit, not only found it pleasing to the eye, but she took it with intent to better her circumstances, is what it is that she believed. And because sometimes there's not a lot of survey, there's not a lot of discussion about that occurrence in Genesis, we just kind of see it as the fall. We see it as mankind getting expelled from paradise, but we don't see it in terms of the covetous nature that represents, going back to Sarah saying that we don't understand the definition of covenant. And so it typically, and when you read this definition that Sarah gave us, that's in Leviticus, that's in Exodus, it talks about not coveting your neighbor's wife, not coveting your neighbor's property, not coveting your neighbor's belongings. But coveting in general, in what the practice is it suggests strongly that you're not content with your current circumstances. And that's why, in many ways, good and bad, the American capitalist society is a good thing, but it plays into the fact that human beings are covetous.
It's keeping up with the Joneses.
It is very much.
And, it's kind of interesting. Watch TV, there's a commercial out there for a yard, for somebody's yard.
Yep.
Yeah, and you get the guy across the street who's like looking at it going, I want their yard.
Right.
So you get that one, plus you get the other guy who's jumping on the trampoline.
Right.
Just looking longingly at this guy's yard. And, so it's kind of like it's even, people want what's better than what they have, as opposed to being content with what God has given them. They want what somebody else has because they think that what they have is so much better. How the grass is always greener on the other side.
Correct.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
In the commercial it is.
Say again.
In the commercial it is.
Yeah, the commercial is.
And remember, we've got virtual listeners, so folks, if you're not letting your voices resonate and ring out, please do that. Yes, Emily.
I was going to say, I've heard two people, and I actually have felt this myself at times, that they were ashamed of their cars coming to church. And, that's not right. We just need to be thankful for transportation and not wish we had somebody's SUV.
Okay. I think that's a valid observation, Bonnie, that the coveting process is not necessarily taking what you see. It's not necessarily apprehending what it is that you desire. It's the fact that you encounter something that you believe. Because here's the key. It's not that it's better. It's you believe that it's better.
It's that yearning. It's that feeling that, yeah.
Correct.
Like, I'm not going to necessarily take somebody's car, right, because it's better than mine, because that would be wrong. But it's like, wow, I wish I had a car that wasn't 10 years old and was 30,000 miles. I want that car. It's,
That car's new and shiny.
yes, new and shiny.
That's one of Gene's favorite things. But
In this society now, it's gotten to the point where it's not just, I wish I had that, but, well, if I can't have it, you shouldn't either.
That's true.
okay. Certainly, I think that our economy works on people purchasing. And so if you're able to be affected to the point where you believe that you need to have, or you don't have what it is that this is another scary term. You'll hear this a lot on HGTV. You'll hear this a lot on the TLC channels. You deserve. Right?
On commercials.
Yeah, you deserve. And Americans, if not Westerners as a whole, especially Americans, believe in the concept of I deserve. And I deserve, it's funny that you had mentioned earlier that, and Sarah said, well, I wouldn't necessarily go out and take someone's car because that's wrong. Well, you taking someone's car is not where it begins. You taking someone's car it begins where Bonnie said, is you look at your car, you look at some other cars and you go, I don't think this car represents what I deserve, and thus I'm going to apprehend, or I'm going to make myself have that which I think I deserve. Now listen, sometimes it's not even always that what you deserve. Sometimes you do things, and we talked about this last time. You look to apprehend what makes you feel good. So even when you're not necessarily looking to covet a thing, sometimes you covet emotions. That's why white lies occur. You tell white lies in part because you believe that remember we laughed about this one. President Lincoln on the TV commercial asks his wife, or his wife says, does this dress make me look fat? Now the answer is what Jerry's biting his tongue over there not saying. The answer is, yes, it does. That's the truth and that's the answer. And he can even say that in love, because then that would mean perhaps she wouldn't wear the clothes because that would be best for her not to wear that dress. But because he's uncomfortable with the position it's going to put him in,
Like the sofa.
we fit. We fit because we're afraid of what the consequences are going to be. And I would challenge that you do this in interactions when you tell people mistruths. When you tell people mistruths about your experience, about your job resume, about other things. Because in many ways, you believe that that is more enriching to your personal history and to who you are than who you are. And that's covenant. Your commentary.
Sometimes I think we even take that a step further.
Okay.
It's not always just that we want something just like, if we want something just like what someone has, we kind of want to up it a notch.
Sure.
And play that. Mine's better than yours.
So
It's all kind of, and it sort of escalates with that.
So you're not wrong about that at all. It's funny that you bring that up, because our guest that's joining us this morning, who's anonymous there, is the Jones guy. And you've heard me talk over the years about him. So he's my best friend from school years ago. Now his name also happens to be. So for years, we would play one-upsmanship in terms of electronic procurement. Who had the better state-of-the-art toys? Now, the funny thing is, we're 88 years old. Some of us that will remain nameless are still doing that. While others are trying to remove themselves from the fray. Again, they shall remain nameless, but there are two people involved. I'll have you assign which person is sinning and which person is on the side of the angel.
We should say welcome to Ernie.
Oh, I guess we do need to say welcome, Ernie. So, the question that was posed to you.
By the way, that is not right.
Tell us the truth, sir.
That is not right. That is no way to treat a first-time guest. Do me that way.
I gave no names. I simply suggested there were parties involved.
You know, I could reveal the dirty laundry here. You are not definitely on the side of the angels.
I said there are two parties involved, and I asked folks to use their judgment to label each of those parties.
I would say there's only one label to both parties.
Correct. And we are still coveters.
And he's right. And so the funny thing is in part because our alienation from the nature of Yahweh God. because we need the adopted blood of Jesus that covers us. Our natural propensity, our natural desire is, give me, I want. The grass is always greener. And if you've not had your own personal Jones, there have probably been people in your life that you've earmarked to say, I want to keep up, or I want to be better than.
Think about it in the church alone.
Oh,
We all have gifts, but how often do we covet somebody else's gift?
yep,
Even though we know that we don't have the demeanor to pull it off. Some of us are introverts and some
Yep.
of us are extroverts.
Yep.
And some people deal with one gift better than another, but we're sweet on the other side.
well, yeah, because, and I tell you, what Gene does regularly is harder than you want to believe that it is. He's gotten so comfortable with framing and then giving commentary and shaping our services, and then also presenting messages, and especially the way that he does, minimal notes. You think it looks like somebody just walking up doing it, but it's not. And so I would also say, look, and I appreciate Diane saying that. In your giftedness, there are things that you're able to do that I certainly can't do. And watching it from afar, it may make me go, man, I wish I could do that the way that Diane does. But part of our work, part of our seminary process, and we're going to talk about this at the end of our being together today, is we're going to work on helping you to be the best you, so that with boldness and courage, we are good kingdom participants and kingdom ambassadors. And if we've not done that well in the past, that's what we're going to be looking to do going forward. So brilliant.
But sometimes you can talk about gifts. Sometimes the gifts that you've been given by God, you may think they're not important.
Right.
But in the body, everything's important, and you need to have everything kind of covered to some degree or another, right?
Right.
And just because your gift is administration versus evangelism,
Right.
doesn't make either one of them any less important, right?
Correct.
And that's, I think, a lot of times people have that mindset that, well, golly, I'm not one that is comfortable getting out and talking to somebody,
Yep.
right? You can be much better behind the scenes, which is where I like to be.
Right.
But, sometimes you think, golly, I'm not really doing anything, but people don't realize that they are. And I think that's what people have to understand, so that people don't think that Gene's any better than anybody else because of what he can do. We all work together.
Yeah, well, look, the funny thing about this organization that we're in is we believe sometimes more in the building than we believe in the nature of what we are. We are the church. And that experiment, that Petri dish, is really one that we're going to be mucking with over the next several weeks and months. And I say that because of this. When you go to school to be a doctor, the point of you going to school is what? So, if you're the very best doctor in the class, and you graduate with a summa cum laude, your title is because you've done what? You've done the work and you've learned to be a doctor. Now, if you're the very worst doctor in the class and you graduate with a 78,
Still a doctor.
right? No comments from the peanut gallery that are on with us. But the point is this, and this is different than the church environment. People come to the church. Pardon me?
I'm leaving. I feel like I'm being picked on.
No, please don't leave, Bernie. We're so glad that you're here. Just ignore it.
Not right.
If people came to be in attendance with each other, with the understanding of what we do together, then we would use the gift of administration, the gift of help, the group of evangelism, the gift of preaching all together correctly, because the job would be to be good ambassadors as opposed to being good attendants for Wednesdays and Sundays. But we've gotten that quite backwards. And so that's why we come in looking at each other's cards, looking at how we're dressed, taking a look at who presents in certain ways, as opposed to thinking that we all need to be practicing our form of medicine, because that's what we're supposed to major in. And so that means that you take all of the gifts that you have. Some of you may be good students. Some of you may be good extroverts. Some of you may be terrific speakers publicly. But the whole point is you all have to work on your gift of going and telling. And that's what church people never almost learn how to do, is go and tell. So they rely on Gene. They rely on Matt. They rely on me to go and do that while you do the behind the scenes stuff. But all of us in our Christian medical school are supposed to learn to go and tell. Yes, sir.
Two things. Number one, this is one of the reasons Paul over and over and over again emphasizes not the building, but the body. And the body is so important because, I mean, we see hands doing things all the time, all right? But nobody's watching my brain do stuff or my lungs do stuff, and we figure that they're less important because they're not doing stuff.
Right.
But let's just face it, that, you know, the brain's kind of important for the other things to do what they're doing, and the lungs as well. And so the gift of administration kind of falls into some of those unseen activities, but they're still vital to the body.
Correct.
And we need to understand that as a body, all of our giftedness has to come into play.
Right.
And we need to really realize that. One of the Corinth was messed up, and this is why Paul had to try to keep on steering them toward a body recognition and a body consciousness. And by the way, this consciousness is something that we can also exercise. We can see. Sometimes I've actually been in experiences where somebody walks into the room and I go, oh, they're part of the body.
Right.
And now this is not a Landru Star Trek thing. This is, you know, this is a recognition that there's a common spirit there.
Right.
So the body is important. We need to understand the functionality, but you've actually strayed from that body just a little bit to talk about the fact that we're all commanded as we go to make disciples. That's not part of giftedness, that's part of command.
Correct. And that's why our giftedness it better positions us to do what the school that we attend is all about.
Right. Now, the second thing I wanted to point out was back to covetousness, is this is something that I'm going to call them, because I hate the word religion, I'm going to call them belief systems, really hone in on, because if you take belief systems, they could really be divided into two categories. One is unis, if you will,
Okay.
unified oneness, where the other is duality. And the importance of those is so critical. The duality says there is a difference between us and deity,
Right.
a difference between us and God. We are not like that. But the oneness that other faith systems are after is you can attain to this level where you are like deity, you are like God, and they have various names for the enlightenment or
Nirvana.
all of this arriving at a new level that you supposedly can get to.
Right.
And that's all driven by that covetousness, because I want to arrive at that level and, just like Eve, be like God.
Correct. Correct. So that's a good setup for the two questions that I posed to you 2 weeks ago that you should have had plenty of time to have a terrific thought process about. So I'm anticipating some wonderful answers, where typically I would ask these questions rhetorically. Today, I'm looking for your answers. So the first question reads this way: how pleased are you with yourself and your conduct? And on and
What time is it?
And in the question posed to you, in parentheses, it says, you should be honest here. So, how pleased are you with your conduct and yourself?
Today, right now, I think I'm doing okay.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm actually feeling okay right now. But there are times when I stumble.
Yep.
I'm not liking Gene.
Okay.
I think Gene sucks.
And I think it's probably everybody's honest, right?
Hmm?
Some days, things are great. right? Some days, not so much. And it might even be sometimes just circumstances. Sometimes, things will come out of your mouth that aren't the best things that come out of your mouth.
Okay.
And I can say that because that happened to me. This happens to me often.
Yep.
Sometimes things will happen. And then you're thinking, oh golly, that wasn't what I should have done, right? But it's just so easy to just not think about it. So, if you lie to yourself, you can say, I'm just fine, thank you very much. And why do you care?
I love Sarah's answer. And here's why I love Sarah's answer. She started out churchy. See, because the church answer is almost the one that Gene just gave a couple moments ago. And that is, right now I'm feeling quite okay, but sometimes I realize I've let down the Lord and I'm quite disappointed in myself.
And I thought,
And that ain't for real. And that's not for real, folks. It's certainly not for real for folks that are not believers, but it's sometimes not even for real for folks who occupy the chairs in these buildings on Sundays and Wednesdays. Let me throw this out at you and see how well you think this may jive with what Sarah said. Very pleased with myself, my decisions, my attitudes, my behavior. And I like this part a lot. This is what Sarah finished with. Who are you to say, tell, or suggest otherwise?
what business is it of yours?
Who are you to say, tell, or suggest otherwise? Let me even add another question there. Why are you up in my business?
But and you got the church answer here, right? That we are accountable. And we should be accountable. And if somebody asks me how things are going, and if I can't be honest, okay? I mean, you can think about various things and various situations that you're in, that if you can't be honest with people, then there's a problem. And it shouldn't be that I get mad at you for calling me up and saying, Seth, what happened today? Did you, how was the day? It shouldn't bother me that you've asked me that question. I should be able to say, you know what? I messed up and here's what I did.
Sarah used a very conditional word. Anybody know the conditional word that Sarah
Did?
Sorry again? It's different. Should. She used this conditional word. You understand why should is really pivotal to what Sarah just said? Because it means, under ideal circumstances, when you're a person that I so choose to allow, if you do it in the right way, then you may ask me about my conduct, about my accountability. Other than that, why are you up in my business? And I'll throw this up before I have Jerry say it. I would suggest to you that you all are better about this thing with your real friends and with your work friends and not with your church friends. Brother Jerry.
In the business code world that I live in for work, we live with that should and shall. As we look through our codes, there are certain things that you shall do this, which means, and then there's other things, well, you might want to.
Correct.
This is the shoulds.
Right.
Typically, there's tons of shalls.
Yep.
And very few shoulds.
Yep. And church people like shoulds.
Mhm.
Now, you're perfectly acceptable with shalls on your work job. That's why you have employment reviews. That's why you have performance reviews. And you've gotten yourself used to performance reviews. You all want to meet or exceed competency, but if you don't meet competency, you're used to that because the environment you're in says that you get to get asked about your professional conduct and contributions, and you're okay with that. When you have true friends, you're actually okay with your friends asking you about your conduct, in part because you believe that they've earned the ability to chat with you about the latest dating mistake you just made, the latest money mismanagement mishap that you're experiencing right now. You're okay with your friends doing that, but don't let it be a church brother or sister.
I'm going to ask that perhaps you need to change one word of what you just said.
Yes.
I think the word ability should be changed to the word right.
Why would you do that?
Because that's what Christians are supposed to do. We are supposed to live a life that surrenders our right to ourselves on an ongoing basis. And that's not just to the Lord, but to those around us, because we should always be about the rights of others before ourselves.
Wow. Yes, sir.
I agree with what Gene is saying, but living up to it is an entirely realistically, I think we all want to have this. Like Sarah said, I fall short of it every day. Okay? I realize this, I know my shortcomings, but I look at my life. Is it ideal? Is everything perfect, all of this? Not by a long shot. I got my ups, I got my downs like everybody else. I got my moments where life sucks. Then life's great, all of this. The in between, how are you today? Yeah, I'm doing all right. But thank Jesus, thank God, I'm better than I was yesterday.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not nothing necessarily that I've done, but I look back and I go, well, I'm a whole lot taller now than I was before. And have I achieved it? No. Am I trying to get there? Yes. The key word is trying.
Yep.
With the help of God and Jesus, striving that way. I'm a long ways from it, but society has gotten us to the point where even covenants, society has put a level out here where you're supposed to be at this level, and if you're not here, you're not successful, all of that, even in the church, with the clothes, the cars, all of this. Look at me, I got my best clothes on, I'm driving my best car, and why ain't you doing this? And, it's like, wait a minute. We're living towards the world, which we're not supposed to, like Jesus says. We're supposed to be more striving to live what God wants us to do, which is a struggle and a battle. So you kind of stuck in between. But I thank God for the gifts, which we talked about. We all have it and all need to use them. We need to each work on our individual gifts, but it still comes back to the bottom line of the commandment of go out, spread the gospel, and outside of the building even, whether you're the big toe, the thumb, the brain, or whatever, we're still all together. We're all important. One can't work independently without the other. We need to be jointly. And I think now in the world and the churches, everything has gotten to the point where we're trying to be too worldly, not concentrating on what we need to do as Jesus loving people.
Right.
And do we all fall short? Yes. And as far as the trust, most of my people that I talk to, that I trust in, are believers.
Sure.
Yeah, I had the work people, all of that, but no, you won't get me so close to me.
Right.
Bottom line. And like you said, you have to earn that trust before you get into my business. That's the bottom line. I don't care if you're a Christian, if you what, you have to earn my trust to get into my business too far. There's going to be a wall here. And I'm not going to allow you past that wall until you build that trust with me.
I appreciate Brother Bucky sharing it. I would also say that the theme of what Brother Bucky's talking about is maturity. And I would step on some toes by even suggesting this. Truth is truth even if you don't like truth.
But at least you know where you stand if you hear the truth.
If you're mature enough to be able to let the truth be the truth, even if you don't know me from Adam, but you walk up to me and tell me that I have mucus on my face. It's the truth, even if I think you don't have the right to approach me to say that and to tell me. Now, let's also hearken that back to kind of the gist of our conversation. The gentleman who's joining us online live today has actually taken a look at a lot of our recordings after they've occurred. So he's joining us live for the first time today. Sorry, sure. Now, the fun thing about our relationship is we've been best friends for a gazillion years. And so we've always had the ability to say, that's stupid, in regard to stuff that the other party was doing. Now, we've both been believers for several years now together. So our trust level and our ability to speak into each other's lives is even much more so exacerbated because we understand that the idea is kingdom value. So even though we're joking a little bit about keeping up with or surpassing the Joneses, both of us understand that the stuff we have matters not at all. Doesn't matter, even if we still have fun with the idea. But the point is, especially that he's a brother in Jesus and understands the nature of Jesus's spilled blood for us, he can say anything he needs to say if it's about me walking toward the kingdom better. And part of the work that we're going to be doing over the next several months is, if we're not there now, is helping people to build bridges so that when you all speak to one another, it's recognizing that surpassing the work friends, surpassing your real friends, folks are speaking to you to help do kingdom-oriented business. Because our job and our focus is well done, good, and faithful service. Anything else is futile. Right? And that's a really tough maturity point for folks to get to. And so it's very easy for us to not only be covetous, because coveting in many ways makes me and helps me to feel like I'm okay. I'm pretty fine with myself. And then the other challenge is I'm an adult. Don't tell me anything, number one, because I'm grown. Number two, don't try to teach me nothing I don't want to learn. I'm not going to do it. And so when that question gets to be, how pleased are you with yourself and your conduct? Very pleased with myself. Very pleased with my decision. Very pleased with my attitude. Who are you to muddle and muck in my business? And the only time I feel less than that is when I don't want to feel okay with my decisions. Other than that, I'm mostly okay. And compared to you meddling, I'm really okay. So the follow-up question that was this. How difficult is it to be less pleased with yourself and your conduct? And in parentheses, it says, you should attempt to be honest here. So how difficult is it to be less pleased with yourself?
I like myself.
Oh, Sarah.
I know, it does get kicked out.
You got kicked out of several churches.
Excellent. That means I have fulfilled my duty for today. Sorry. But why should I feel this? I like myself.
Yeah. We've gotten this far without you, without your meddling. I'm doing just, in fact, I think I have done here. Why should I be less pleased? I haven't killed anyone. I don't steal. I go to church. I don't have any affairs or sex outside of marriage. I don't really lie. Thank you, Steve. Steve starts coughing up in the middle. I have a pretty good relationship with my parents. I don't need other people meddling in my business or affairs. Things are pretty good, and I'd like them to stay that way. Thank you very much. That is most people's understanding and concept about themselves.
I love me some.
Now, we're not supposed to say that in church. However, that's the message that we present in church. I hear you.
That's why they say, you need to protect yourself.
Diane just said that's partly where the love your neighbor as yourself, love as yourself comes in. Bruce told us this situation once, and it freaked me out because I didn't get my head around this until he said this. And I want you to understand the concept of love your neighbor as yourself. It's a really awful one to consider, but it's kind of what Jesus is talking about. And this is why not only is it tough to love the people you love, it's tough to love your enemies because you have a tough time loving the people you love. So this is what Bruce explained to me once, and I explained to us, I believe, as loving your neighbor as yourself. You come home to your suburban neighborhood, wherever you are, and as you pull in, you discover that your neighbor's house is on fire. And when you discover that, now watch this, most of us in this room responded how? Nope. Wasn't my house.
It was the other house.
Wasn't my house.
It was 2 houses down.
Or you think, they're right next door to me. I gotta fix my issue because, right?
It could be me.
It could be me, it could spread.
Right.
So something, if you're honest, yeah, so that's probably the first thing that, now granted, you are gonna call 911. But
That's not the first time? That scares me.
well, no, sometimes you think right away, like, wait, is this gonna affect me? Is this gonna affect my house?
Yep,
You
that's right.
may be calling 911 at the same time you're thinking that, but that thought is probably crossing your mind.
Well, I could have painted the picture better by having the fire trucks and EMTs already next door, which is probably the better picture. But so 911's already been called. And so typically the response is, wasn't my house. Dodged a bullet. Loving your neighbor as yourself means you lament that it wasn't your house. You break down in tears that it wasn't your house. Do you know how foreign that is? Because I like my stuff, I like me, I like junk the way I like it, and when it gets out of whack, I don't like it.
Well, think about it when you're in traffic. You know, traffic is a result of potentially someone in a car accident or whatever. You're more concerned about the delay to where you need to get to than that person that's being taken away by you.
And that is, yeah, people are such a hurry, right? Yes, that they're not thinking the impact of whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the result is, they're not thinking about the impact to other people. They're thinking about it more like, great, I'm gonna miss this meeting, or I'm gonna be late to whatever, right? Or, you know, I need to get to the store. I've got things to do
Right.
whatever the case may be.
Right.
I don't have time.
Correct.
There you go. That's a better way to look at it.
Right.
But it's a very true statement. People, they don't think about the impact to others.
We don't care
Well,
about the
gut
impact.
reaction is that I've gotten a little better at following it up with, oh my gosh, someone's having a really bad day.
But it's that first thought you're thinking, oh, great. And then it's like, oh, wait, I shouldn't think like that. But we are people. And unfortunately, that's where we're wired,
Right.
you know?
It's why Christians flip off the guy who just cut you off on West Road.
With a big old Jesus sticker on the back.
That's correct. Big old fish on the back. Because Christians are very good Christians on Sundays and Wednesdays inside a building. But you catch us otherwise, and we're in the middle of our own stuff. Our own stuff and our own kingdoms, mostly that we've built because we covet that which we believe is going to make us better, as opposed to being content in the situation that the Lord has put us because we're right where He wants us to be.
So speak up a little bit.
This morning, my devotion was not mine, but yours. Disappointed this morning in myself. Do you think of all the things He call you to do and that you just really get it? You give it all away.
We're Americans and we like stuff, you know. It does. And Sarah, if folks who didn't hear this in virtual land, Sarah said it goes back to the rich young ruler. Because, and the cool thing about Jesus is, Jesus wouldn't have asked necessarily this thing for anybody else walking up to Him. But because Jesus knew this guy's heart, remember, God doesn't look on the outward circumstances. He looks on the inward guy. And so this guy is coming up talking smack to the Lord saying, I have followed all the 10 commandments. I am in position to seek eternal life. What must I do to pursue that? And the Lord kind of looks at him
Give it all away.
and says, just give it away.
He walks away sad and disappointed.
Because he was a wealthy young man. So we all have different versions of what we covet. This guy's particular covet junk was accumulating as cash. Right. But we've got, guys, we have a lot of this. And you know, again, I'll challenge you that in interpersonal relations, interpersonal interactions, when you decide that you're going to say something that's not quite right because it creates less friction, it creates less of a consequence for you, you're practicing covetousness even though it doesn't feel like you are. It's because you want to circumvent the normal outcome of this particular interaction by having it go another way, and so you don't own what the reality of the interaction should be.
When I was taking care of my sister when she had surgery a few months back, I went to visit a church while I was there. I service on a Friday night. And the young men in the church were outside with their trucks parked, trying to figure out who had the truck that was higher, who had jacked up their tires higher than the other. It sounds like that. It made me very sad that that was what was important to them, and that we started this morning talking about how much what our neighbors have is like, if we're in a constant fight with ourselves and getting to where we need to be, because we are constantly looking at things in different ways and coveting things in ways that we don't think we are. Self-recognition is a big thing in life.
It is, because I like myself and the things that I think are important about life best. And if God wants something better for me, it better look better. It better be like, like a fleet of cars. It better look like, I don't want a Piper Cub. I want like a Boeing. And if it's going to be a boat, you better make it a yacht. And it's got to be like a 60-footer. Otherwise, Lord, maybe you don't really know what's best for you. Now, I'm being very, very flippant about this to help you just giggle a little bit, because this is in many ways an encounter that we don't do among brethren, because this has to have you think, not only day by day, but moment by moment, where's my head at? Where am I with my own personal satisfaction with myself, versus being able to see that what I have without Jesus' blood is filthy rags. I esteem myself in pretty good shape. When you start to esteem yourself pretty decently, then you start to compare yourself to other people, and guess what? You come off pretty doggone good. And that's why in many ways, very, very many churches are unwelcome. Because when I compare, certainly what I see, and by the way, whether you say you are or not, everybody is judgmental and opinionated. Some of us are better at maintaining that and holding it close to our vest than other folks are, because a lot of you, not you poker people, you people that don't have poker face, it's right on your face. So when the guy comes in to visit your worship group and he's a little stinky, it's on your face. When the guy comes into your worship group and is not dressed the way you think church people should be dressed, you operate and it looks different. When the guy comes in and sits in your regular seat, we can see it. I'm sorry. Oh, yes, sir.
I was just gonna say, you talk about that. I clip my tongue. But every morning on my drive in, I pray, Lord, let them see you through me, and watch. Keep watching when I'm talking because that's my number one prayer. I'm doing a very good job with that. And in this heated environment that we've been in, for sure, it definitely explodes in my chair every day. It gives me an opportunity to share Jesus.
Right.
And I try my best to keep it on the love of Jesus. And the fact that that's what we need. That's what our country needs, is the love of Jesus.
Yeah.
And it sometimes it is a struggle, because I could be very easily drug into that. Because people are heated. And especially, a little bit older people they're deep seated in their traditions and what they believe. And Lord knows, I was brought up with a man that was very strong in what he believed. And so it would be very easily to be drawn into that whole animosity and hate speech that's being spoken now. But I try diligently to stay in the Word. And, that's, because a lot of the people that sit in my chair are Christians.
Sure.
So,
Thank you.
That call themselves Christians.
Yeah.
Or Catholics. And, that how important it is for us to let our light shine through all of smoke. And to not allow the hate speech to be the voice that's heard. And that, the voice that needs to be heard every time of everything is the voice of the Lord. And everyone was like, please put my tongue. Let them see you not.
So you're right on target there, Angel. There's a lot of my believer friends who are having this discussion right now where we are watching poorly discipled Christians blow it every day. And as an example, the Chick-fil-A CEO, who, whether you like to eat at, because that's church people's favorite food, by the way, but whether you eat there or not, we all had an appreciation for what Chick-fil-A seemed to stand for. And in the latest light of the cultural upheaval, we're watching Christians want to keep the peace in a way that's not the way the Lord asked us to. And in so doing, they're bending to a kind of covetousness to kind of go, I want to change the narrative. I want to change the perception. So I'm going to go along to get along. And the Lord didn't call us to that. And so we're watching Christians right now making buffoons of themselves by doing and saying things that aren't in the realm of what our text manual tells us to do. Drew Brees, who a lot of us had a lot of high esteem for as a believer in the public, has been completely devastated by needing to maintain his status quo as opposed to standing for what Jesus called us to do. And that's that compromise that then begins to lead us down the road of covetousness. That's the gateway sin. Because now, as much as we say we stand for Jesus, we really stand for my ideals and principles more so than what you told us. And that's how that gateway opens wide, wide open. And that's why when we take a look at this, and I'll paraphrase as we take a look, Paul encounters this. And this is why when I read this in my studies, I said I had to bring this to us because it was just colossal. The Apostle Paul, this is how, if you understand church history a little bit, Martin Luther read the book of Romans. And the book of Romans is what was influential for him to recognize that the Catholic Church had it all wrong. And when he got to Christ alone, Scripture alone, faith alone, it changed his whole perception. And that led to how it is we're all sitting today together in a reformed theology that happened back with Martin Luther and some of those influential people at the time. Well, Paul had his encounter as a Pharisee of Pharisees, recognizing how, as good as he was, because Paul was groomed to be a Pharisee of Pharisees. And he was groomed to follow the law in many ways the way the rich young ruler said that he was supposed to. But when he encountered, of all commandments, commandment number 10, it's the one that bounced him on his ear. Now think about that. As a Pharisee, you would think, and this is where Gene came in when we discussed this before, you would think 1 through 4 would have him on his knees, but it wasn't. Now, if you don't know what I mean by 1 through 4, have the 10 Commandments someplace where you can remember those and know what I'm talking about. Well, 1 through 4 are all about you and your relationship with our Creator. And you would think that a Pharisee who's a teacher and a student of God's law would go, I'm struggling with all 4 of them. But he wasn't. He wasn't struggling with number 5, which is honor your mom and dad. He wasn't struggling with 6 through 9. 10 is where he recognized the gateway to dishonoring Yahweh God came. And that's covetousness. And so when we take a look at this, Romans 7:1. Paul says, I would not have known what sin was except through the law. To himself, Paul believed he was a pretty good person. Now, this is before his encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus. The standards of the law permitted Paul to measure his behavior according to Yahweh's commands. You understand what I mean by that? Is he didn't think that he was breaking any of the laws where you shall have no other God before me, don't make a graven image, honor keep on the Sabbath, keep holy. Right? He thought he was doing all of that stuff, and he wasn't killing nobody. By the way, if you remember earlier when I asked, is it difficult to change your decisions? I actually went through all of the commandments to paraphrase. I didn't kill nobody. I didn't steal no stuff. I'm not having relationships outside of marriage. So Paul wasn't doing any of that stuff. But when he got to 10, he went, oh man. Oh man. Paul said, I would not have really known what coveting was like if the law had said, do not covet. Understand what that means? Paul thought the natural desires of his life, of his academia, of his goals were all okay until he got to commandment number 10. So some of the things that happened, Paul considered himself an obedient follower of the law until he arrived at a true understanding, like Sarah suggested, of commandment number 10. He thought he was a pretty doggone good person. Paul understood that it was deeper than simply not wanting his neighbor's stuff. It includes envy, greed, jealousy, and the desire to have what you think you're missing out on. So I would almost suggest to you, right now, and don't misunderstand this, because I'm not saying that you shouldn't be professional in the best way you should be. But when you're an aggressive career climber, when you're an aggressive overachiever, oftentimes you can follow into this covetousness, this category. Because you're never pleased with where you are. You always think you need to have or achieve more. And Paul, when he began to look at his life, that's kind of what his whole life was about. Is achieving more, accomplishing more, having more, accumulating more. Paul failed in this commandment because he was an overachiever, because he was a career climber. He was a know-it-all from a prominent family. He was pedigreed. He was tracking for greatness as a Pharisee of Pharisees. He was tracking for greatness so much that, what was Paul doing on the road to Damascus when we see him? What was he doing?
Ready to get some more.
Let's get some more.
Who's going to persecute more Christians?
Okay, and sometimes that persecution would include, okay, ready for this? Watch this. Who gave him that assignment? Right. Paul gave himself this assignment. Do you understand what I mean by that?
It wasn't that he was directed by someone.
Correct.
He felt directed to do it.
And he went and got permission
And
to do this.
Because he was the Pharisee.
He thought this was his road to being, if not his teacher, Gamaliel, his teacher's teacher, Hillel. This would put him on the map as a rabbi, as a Pharisee of Pharisees. So he asked for this assignment.
Volunteered to do it.
Absolutely.
So he created it and he
Yes.
asked for permission.
Yes. We don't look at that. Romans 7:8. But sin produced in me every kind of covetous desire. Consider pride, arrogance, willfulness, conceit, accumulation, my way or the highway, keeping up with the Joneses, are all categories of how this covetousness creeps into your life. Do not, when we hear the phrase do not, it often translates to do this frequently, do this whenever you wish, and to what degree you wish, unless you don't like the circumstances or the consequences. And then engage until you're caught or almost caught. And then my notes are marital affairs. And by the way, this is how people wind up stealing. This is how kleptomania gets its legs. You're a little kid, you go in the store, steal a pack of gum. Nobody catches you. The thrill of what you just did sometimes sticks with you. So the next time you go to the store, now it doesn't always happen that way, but when we have folks who have a pattern of kleptomania, that's how it begins. There are a lot of Hollywood stars who have no need to steal, and a lot of times if you used to read the old Enquirer or those, there used to be those gotcha situations because Lindsay Lohan has just stolen a scar from Saks Fifth Avenue. And the point is, why? Because she got a thrill from doing it. I would almost suggest to you that the law almost is in this position too. It creates insincere obedience or blatant rebellion. I'll give you an example. Speed limit 55.
I didn't hear what you said.
Speed limit 55.
Some people think it's a suggestion.
Absolutely. Some people think it's like Jerry said, you should drive at 55 miles an hour. Very few of us see it as thou shalt not exceed 55 miles an hour. And
I get told that I drive like a grandma by my kids.
Well, the cops will allow you 5 miles.
That's what I'm saying. I'm right.
so let's tackle that. I'm glad somebody said that, because that's one of the biggest rumors and myths and urban legends that is not so. Yes, sir.
And the people that are enforcing it are the worst offenders. They can't drive 55. No lights on or anything, they're moving up.
Sure. Sure. When you ask people what the speed limit is, typically folks who practice this blatant rebellion or insincere obedience to the law will tell you that you get 5 miles over the limit, but you don't.
Well, in theory, you might actually get 9.
You don't.
I know, but you get reckless driving. Because sometimes you're working insurance, right?
Yep.
And if you're caught in the first 1 to 9,
Yep.
only 1,
Yep.
it's forgiven
By your insurance company.
by your insurance company. So, but I'm just saying,
You
some people
still-
think you may have 9 because you're not really that 10 number. It's fine, or you're going with the traffic. They're all going faster than you, so
You're just following.
you're just following.
Don't be like
You're
my
drifting.
When the cop says, do you know why I stopped you? And he said, because you couldn't catch the others. Don't say that.
Did you say that?
He sure did.
Oh.
No, my uncle did.
Your uncle did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what?
Didn't do well.
In today's climate, you could probably get away with almost anything with police, especially if you got my team. And again, I'm looking forward to a lot of people giving me stuff. And that's one of them. I believe that now for people of this melanin sort of shade is that 110 miles an hour, I'm pretty much driving on the Autobahn. I dare the police to stop. The other item is this. Watch this. This is fun. You get to answer this. What is yellow light? Traffic light. What is yellow light?
Speed up and go through the light.
Yeah, hurry up before you turn red.
Yep. If there's nobody in front of you, it's a speed up. But if there's somebody in front of you, you're like, go, go, go. I know, that's me.
Well, it ain't
I
pink
do
yet.
also break.
Okay, it's not green yet. Sure.
It's not pink yet.
It's okay. I used to have a really good friend, and his take on that was squeeze the lemon, is what he believed that yellow light meant. All of us, for the most part, have taken a driver's ed class. I think that our generations all had to go through this, I think. So I would tell you in an interesting way, red light means stop, yellow light means stop. In fact, if those of you can remember back to your text, it used to mean actually literally, stop unless unsafe to do so.
In other words, if you are too close and you cannot stop because it's going to cause a problem, then you go
continue
through.
on. But it doesn't mean caution. It doesn't mean slow down. It doesn't mean any of the stuff you said, Bucky. It means stop. But as a culture,
You were Nathan.
Sure.
It says yield.
yeah, yield to what? And yield also is going to say, is yield to understanding the traffic pattern that means stop, or if it's unsafe, continue to go. Now we know as a whole that Virginians struggle with 2 terms, merge and yield. And that's a different lesson. Okay? And that's why, again, Christians usually show different birds to people in Virginia because of merge and yield.
But you're right, they don't understand the whole zipper thing.
Oh, it's just insane. And the fact that you're laughing suggests you know, if you're not those yourself, you know Virginians who drive in that particular way.
We probably should, I know in some places when I'm driving, you'll see a flashing yellow light with a sign that says prepare to stop.
Correct.
So that's really, I guess, what we should be doing when we see that first yellow light is be preparing to come to a complete stop. But
Right.
most of us,
Squeeze it.
yep, try to push right through.
Squeeze.
Yep.
Squeeze the lemon. Romans 7:9 through 13. Paul paraphrasing, he says, I found the very commandment that was intended to bring life actually brought me death. Yahweh wants us to understand the devastation of sins in our lives. That's why he gave us the 10 Commandments. He wants us to understand the devastation of sin, so that when those 10 things are out of alliance with what God wants for us, our life is not going down the road or the path that he would want it to have. And surprisingly, we all differently choose to practice or not practice some of those guys based on how it makes us feel. All right? And you know, one of those a lot is we talk, you know, Christians are nuts about homosexuality. Right now, Christians are nuts about the racial stuff. But we're still okay with, you know, unwed mothers, single parents, and sexual intimacy outside of marriage. We don't really have the same kind of, that it violates God's law. Because we pick and choose how we feel about it. And our culture today is pretty fine with single moms, single parents. And I don't mean single parents who've lost a situation because of death or because of those kind of things. That people have kids because they want someone unconditional love. See Maury, you are the father.
You are not.
Well, there would be no show if there were too many you are not the fathers.
That's testimony for people.
Yeah. Killing babies is really, really pretty normal in our culture. So we're going to go nuts about the cops killing 19 people of color, but the 60 million babies we killed, well, no issue. So again, our covetousness puts us in a position where we know better and we like better what we like than what God sees. The commandments help us recognize that we can't get life right according to what he demands. We need help. And that's why Jesus has to exchange. See, his death is important, but his life is important too. Because he lived the perfect life, and he exchanges his life and his shed blood for our junk. And that exchange is what makes us righteous in the presence of holy Yahweh God. That exchange. Perfect life, death, blood, his resurrection. Yahweh intended that understanding the law will lead us to that help in the person of Jesus, who is life and the perfection and the completion of the law. And so that's why understanding grace, which we're going to work on a lot over the next few months, is important. See, it's not that the law isn't important, but the fact that we can't accomplish it is important for the believer to know. But that doesn't mean you act like you don't do X and so. You need to be as transparent and as accountable for your junk, because that's going to help us relate to the world at large, who's already in the midst of this junk. So that means, guess what? Folks, there are a lot of people who attend churches and who say they're Christians, and they are racist as all get out. So come to the table and say that. You know, I deal better, a guy with my tan, I deal a whole lot better knowing that you don't think people of color, blah, 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 blah. I'm okay with that, because I can have a discussion with you. But if you're secretly walking around, to my face you look one way, and secretly you walk around and think something else, I'm going to have a tough time working and interacting in your life in a way that's meaningful. Come to the table with truth. This is why we have to accept Jesus as the answer to our sin nature and sin problem. He's the author, finisher of our life dilemma. Guys, that's what we're going to be working on over the next several months. This United States is not going to get any better anytime soon. So we've got to figure out how to be better ambassadors. Because right now, the church is stinking this joint up. Regularly, there are posts of Christians pretty much laying down and let somebody just drive the truck all over because they don't know how to stand. Number one, they're struggling with Ephesians in terms of putting on the whole spiritual armor, but they're not disciplined enough to recognize how to stand and be salt and light. Guys, that's what we're going to be working on. And that means helping you not to back down off of stupid when stupid is present. Because if you present that Jesus is who he is, the author, the finisher to our life dilemma, it's going to make an entire difference for this world war. And guess what? Sometimes it's going to happen person by person. Sometimes we're going to get a chance as a group to go and do the thing that Bucky and Angel talk about, to go crash on the group and then divide and conquer and tell people just how great Jesus is. As a group together, that's going to give us a little bit more boldness because we're together doing it. And that's why we're going to do some of that stuff. So be prepared. So when Paul says, and I love this because it made more sense to me when I took a look at it. When Paul says, the things I want to do, I do not do. And the things I do not want to do, I do. This is Romans 7:14. This is what he means. He wanted to discontinue his pridefulness, his wanting what's best for himself over others. But on his own, in his own power, he couldn't do it. He couldn't get out of his own way. And guys, this is why we need accountability. Let me tell you. I cannot tell you how much if I didn't know and love them, I love Brother Gene, I love Brother Jerry, I love Brother Steve. Bucky and I kind of do this too. Because I feel like there's not a whole lot of Emperor's New Clothes moments with those guys. I'll send Steve some stuff, and Steve will read it, and he'll go, this is pretty racy. I'll go, I know it's racy, dude, but it's got truth in it. And we can enjoy that exchange. I love where Gene comes from. I'm comfortable enough with Gene to say, Gene, I'm going commando today. What do you think about that? And Gene says, come, okay. Now, don't picture it. It's just hypothetical. See, you church people, look what's on your mind. Thou shalt not whatever you're thinking. So if I say to Gene, I'm going, this is. I am a stand-in for Preston. So if I tell Gene I'm going commando, and Gene says, dude, that just ain't right. I'm okay with Gene saying that to me. Jerry and I go out, and Jerry and I and Sherry, we go out, we have a really good time. Do we meet some crazy? Do we encounter crazy a whole lot?
Stupid crazy.
Who? And we get to hang out with crazy a lot. And so we get to gauge, there's no limit and level to how, I don't really feel uncomfortable with Jerry and with Sherry because we have dealt with crazy together. Folks, that's what makes us stronger as ambassadors when Jerry can say anything to me and I'm not going to go, oh, you're not a Christian, you're not a believer. He can say whatever he needs to say because there's an accountability. There's a talk to me about my conduct. There's a, if I'm not right, I need to know from you first. We're also going to discover things like, when we take a look at spiritual gifts, here's the thing. Sometimes I go, I got none. But if you're honest, watch your project manager. Sometimes somebody else has to tell you what your spiritual gift is. And the only way that happens is by spending time with some people. Because if you spend, and your Christianity is private or it's online or it's virtual, which a whole lot of churches and people are going to do, people are not going to get a chance to experience and reveal their spiritual gifts because they're not in community with each other. And sometimes it's going to be a Gene that walks up to me and says, brother, your gift is the gift of encouragement. And I go, you are smoking crack.
But I keep trying to tell you.
Yeah, I keep not looking. So that's what community does, folks. And we're going to talk about this probably toward the end of us being together today. Because that's what we're supposed to be looking for. Not the covetous ideal that I'm okay, you're not okay, or who are you to meddle with me? Because if you're able, as we link arms together, that we want what's kingdom best, sometimes the truth is not going to be so happy sounding. Sometimes it means we've got to change our understanding, perspective, and attitude. Because Jesus' truth is not one that how did Pontius Pilate respond when Jesus said, the truth shall set you free? What did Pontius Pilate do? Steve says, what's that? And then once Jesus told him what truth was, what did he do? Nothing except washed his hands to say, I'm not responsible for what you just explained to me or what's going to happen to you. But that doesn't make him not responsible. In his head, he chose a path that he thought made him feel better. Christians, church people, believers, that's what we spend a whole lot of time doing. Choosing the path of what makes me feel better as opposed to what's going to hold the candle and my feet to the fire and help me be a better ambassador. And guys, that's the path we've got to be on. You got something, Steve?
It just sort of struck me that, first off, I appreciate you bringing this because this idea of this 10th commandment is something that doesn't get discussed a lot. But if you stop and you really think about it, there's a flip to that. And I would say it's probably largely responsible for the church's willingness to compromise on a lot of these other issues where, in times past, if you're shacking up outside of marriage, that was seriously frowned upon. You wouldn't, the church would not compromise on that. But as culture changed, that perception was changed. So then it moved to the next thing, homosexuality, transgender, or whatever. And the church was willing to compromise on those issues because it was concerned about what the culture thought about. So it was covering that approval from secular society or what have you. That's sort of the flip side of it.
Yeah. Steve's right on, guys, is that the older I get, and the Lord's been good in that he's kept most of us here pretty healthy. We've been together for a pretty good long piece of time. So we haven't had people that we've had to, have Gene speak funeral words over, that kind of stuff. But the older I get, and the older I think my wife and I get, we're really looking forward to well done, good and faithful servant. I love my wife because she loves Jesus more. You know how cool that is? And I say that because that means that I've got to listen sometimes to harsh feedback and criticism sometimes if I need to get on Jesus' page as opposed to my own. If I'm going to be a good ambassador, then that means I got to do things Jesus' way instead of my way. Because that covetousness is the gateway to me enjoying all this other stuff and thinking that it's okay. And we're going to be on a tough and a tight and different road these next few months. We need to be ready for what that's going to call us. A couple comments and then we're going to be done. By the way, thank you guys for staying. Paul did not want to be arrogant or conceited or know-it-all, but on his own, that's exactly what he was. I'll own some of that. The solution. Grace. Amen. And we're going to do some real study and understanding grace. Grace, imparted by Jesus' perfect life and his death and his resurrection. And it's freedom from being and feeling guilty. Guys, that's the key. See, this is the thing that makes me comfortable with Brother Gene, Jerry, Steve Buck, is there's a difference in conviction and guilt. Right? Conviction means, I need to not be doing this. Conviction is kind of what the prodigal son experiences when he goes, I shouldn't be here when there's an alternative that's better. And he turns around and goes 180 degrees in the direction different. That's conviction. Guilt is when you stay in your junk and you go, I feel bad. I feel terrible. I feel awful. I'm not going to change. I feel terrible. This is terrible. I shouldn't be doing this. But I'm going to change it all. That's guilt. You're on the same pattern of behavior. You're wallowing in your own stuff, in part because you can't go, Jerry, can you help me get out of my own way? Steve, I'm struggling with this, man. Can you help me not be flipping on the pornography every time I turn on my cell phone? That kind of junk, right? Grace imparted and its freedom from feeling guilty because of the condemning nature of the law is key to believers living, acting, thinking, and their operating agenda each and every day. We're going to study a lot about grace and its impact and influence and how we should embrace and understand this. So I'm done with the talk and chat stuff. Commentary, feedback, your stuff before we transition on to the next stuff. Thank you, by the way. Yeah. Grace, imparted by Jesus' perfect life and death and his resurrection, and its freedom from feeling guilty because of the condemning nature of the law, is key to the believer's living, acting, thinking, and operating agenda each day. So now we're not just talking about behavior, we're talking about the way you think, the things you say, all of that stuff. Your comments, your feedback, let's close down the shows.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Good stuff, by the way. Thanks for inviting me again.
You have a face?
What I'm getting from this is that we're talking about the gateway to sin, the 10th commandment, covetousness. What it kind of breaks down for me is that you have the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. So this gateway of sin, covetousness, is pretty much the pride of life, materialism. You know, basically, you want to do better for yourself. You want what the other, what your neighbor has. And you know, with me being a physician, this is pretty much my environment. My environment is, you know, what does that other doctor have? You know, everyone talks about their houses, their cars, you know, what they have. You know, back in the day, actually, it still happens now, but back in the day, you know, I wanted that stuff. I wanted to be, pretty much have everything that everyone else had, and I wanted to have actually more. But now, I'm a child of Christ, now I kind of came to terms, and I still have that. But the thing that I noticed, like, what's the solution? Okay, we all know what the problem is. We all know that we have this problem. So now the question is, what's the solution? How do we get out of this mindset of wanting what our neighbor has and wanting to have more things and better things, and we feel guilty and we feel jealous of people that have better things than us? In my mind, it kind of gets me out of it because I think that way all the time. But I can always notice that I'm in that mindset. I can trigger myself out of it. And for me, it is a gratitude thing. Gratefulness, gratitude. Gratefulness and gratitude is the enemy to materialism. So if you all of a sudden are coveting something, you want this, you want a better car, your neighbor just got a brand new car, and here you are with your 5-year-old car, and you really want a new car, but you can't afford it. It's kind of like you figure, like say, for one, you know that you're a child of Christ, I mean, you're a child of God, and that He's taking care of you. So if He's taking care of you, He's the source that everyone's getting all this stuff from, and He's the source, and He has unlimited access to stuff. Nothing disappears. It's not like, you know, there's only a certain amount of new cars, and, you know, once they're out, then there's no more. God can create a car anytime He wants. He can give you a car anytime He wants, whatever. But the thing is like, be satisfied for what you have. If you're satisfied with what you have, like that neighbor gets a brand new car, or the neighbor next to me, all of a sudden they're putting a pool in their backyard, and I don't have a pool in my backyard. It's like, man, I need to get a pool in my backyard because they got one. But you're like saying, there's a reason why you don't have a pool in your backyard. And only God knows that. It's not like God is trying to keep things from you. God is our parent. Like, the way I look at it is that you're a parent. Today's Father's Day. So if you're a father, you have kids. Don't you want your kids to have the best that you can provide for them? You do. But sometimes the kids are not ready for what you want to give them. You know, and the kids want, give me, I want this, I want that. And you like say, no, we're not going to get that right now. You are not ready to have that. And that's what I feel that God is like sometimes when I see things that other people have. I feel that God is like saying, hey, I could give that to you. You know, and if you're thinking spiritually, and you really like believe in your authority in Christ, then you basically will say it's already spiritually given to you. In the spiritual realm, God has already given it to you. It just hasn't manifested right now. Not that you're going to get everything you ask for. Basically, it has to be in the will of God. You can't just like say, I want a new car, and He's just going to give it to you, because then it's like selfishness. So what I'm saying is that gratefulness and gratitude really squelches your sense of being materialistic. Because if you're happy for where you are and what you have, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, God, I am so grateful that you gave me a house to live in. I mean, I could not have a house. And here I am thinking that I want a bigger house, a better house. I mean, the house that I'm in right now is like perfect. If you think that your house that you live in right now is perfect, then all that covetousness and someone else getting a new house or getting a bigger house is so much more mitigated. At least from my standpoint. I mean, this is how I'm kind of like getting over. I mean, I still am materialistic, and it's hard in my world. I mean, that's pretty much the lifestyle that, you know, my environment's around. But if I go back to my gratefulness for what I have already, then I really, it comes down to terms and it's like, man, God, you are great. I mean, you're an awesome God. Basically, give me what I have right now, and I know you're going to take care of me, and that I can get more if you feel that that's in your will for me. So I'm just like saying that there's always, I mean, we talk about, you know, covetousness and materialism and capitalism. But if you think, if our society was more into the word and more godly, and we appreciated what we have in gratefulness and gratitude, it'd be a much better place. So basically, that's what, you know, I kind of like saying, I kind of like when sensing, that's what it is. Pride of life is what this gateway to sin is all about. And materialism is kind of like, that's where how it manifests itself. But gratitude is the solution. Gratefulness and gratitude is the solution. So anytime you're feeling that you're feeling materialistic and you're jealous and you're greedy and so forth, just kind of like go to God. What have you given me? And then just like be prayerful about it and be thankful that He has basically provided for you. Where you look at the, I mean, it's always like, you know, you're always looking at, you know, the grass is always greener on the other side. No, it's not always greener on the other side. You think it is, but once you get there, it's like, whoa, this wasn't so good. So basically, gratefulness, if we could just remember that gratefulness is the solution to what we're kind of talking about, I think it might help you guys out a lot. It helped me out with that one.
Thank you, faceless visitor.
I'm muting myself.
Two things. You brought one scripture to mind. Contentment with godliness is great gain. I mean, that's huge. He's right. I have to disagree, though, because every other lust of flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life. All the other two are also tied up in the pride of life, and they are also tied up in covetousness. Lust of the flesh, I want that. Lust of the eyes, I want that. Pride of life, I deserve that. And, you know, they're all coming back to a meism, what it really comes down to. And two more thoughts real quickly. Number one, isn't it kind of humorous that Pilate, a politician, asked the question, what's truth? And number two, Paul saying that he got caught up in covetousness kind of takes you to the other nine, doesn't it?
It does.
And so he realizes, oh, if I've got covetousness going on, I'm not putting God as the first. I'm not doing these other things. And so it again, it's like a row of dominoes.
Other folks. All right, so we're closing down this section. We're celebrating our last physical gathering in this building, because the building technically belongs to other folks. So please enjoy the time here. Don't feel like you're lingering longer than you should, and if you do, you're certainly welcome to take off. But this is the last time in this building you'll be, in a way that there's a sense of some ownership of it. So I would hold on to that feeling. So even if it feels like we're lingering a little long today, folks, the next time that you're in this building, it'll be as visitors. Okay? So let me pray. Thank you, visitor there. Thank you for folks popping in. This is a great day that the Lord's made. So we're looking forward to celebrating it, rejoicing, and be glad in it. Lord, we don't deserve how good you are to us, Lord. We don't deserve to overlook our faults and see our needs. Lord, you did that in advance when you allowed Jesus to come and live the perfect life and die for us and shed his blood. Thank you for an everlasting love. Thank you for superlative love. Thank you for wanting what's best for us, Lord. Help us to be, indeed, your people who recognize what you have, not in store for us, but what you have in mind for us to be about. Help our agenda, help our actions, help our activity, our very thoughts, Lord. Help us to be attuned and conform to your likeness, Lord, so that as we go about this world, we recognize that the accumulation of stuff, whether it's accolades, whether it's goods, whether it's praise, is not what we're supposed to be about. Person by person, Lord, help us to be about kingdom business. Brother Bucky regularly says, the fields are white for us and ready, but the workers, not only are they few, but they're seeming to get fewer as folks are standing for themselves and not knowing how to stand for you. So, Lord, equip us, embolden us. Help us, Lord, to not only come boldly before you, but to confront this culture one that doesn't honor you in the way, Lord, that previously perhaps we might have, even in a casual sense. And help us, Lord, to recognize that conflict is not the absence of peace, but sometimes conflict is the way, Lord, person by person, that someone's life can be drawn to yours by recognizing that their path is not one that honors you. It's not the answer to the anomalies and the anarchy that's going on now. So, Lord, bless Brother Gene as he comes. Bless our time together. Help us to be, as Brother Ernie said, grateful and content for those things that we have right now, Lord. You said you never leave us or forsake us. It's the most important thing. And Lord, help us to be about your business day by day, person by person. Amen.